Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. This is our last in our series of winter forums for 2022. And maybe you can hear me better without the mask. We're pleased to welcome for our final event Reverend Dr. Melissa Lemons. Some of you know her. She's been around town for a while now, since 2015, so 6 years. First as pastor of Zion, and now as the pastor for community ministry for Unity, which is a combination of Zion and Spirit of Life churches, which you have probably heard about that they merged. Now, Reverend Dr. Lemons is an experienced counselor and educator with a demonstrated history of working in higher education, and her specialty is research and psychotherapy and community outreach. And her educational background, she is a graduate of Yale with a bachelor's in psychology, then went on to a master's of developmental psychology from University of California, San Diego, and then a master's degree in counseling psychology from Bowie State in Maryland, and then on to Union Theological Seminary in New York, where she got her Master of Divinity. And before coming to Zion, she was a pastor in Berks County, at a church in Berks County, and briefly at one at Fayetteville, North Carolina, before we were so lucky that she came to Wilmington. And in between all this time, she has been a professor of psychology, online and in person, for University of Maryland, University College Europe, and now more recently, Wilmington University. So we're pleased to welcome Reverend Dr. Melissa Lemons today to tell us about what Unity is up to, how they're coping with the pandemic, and how their outreach is going, and possibly in there anything that St. Mark's can do to support your outreach while we do our own, but support yours as well. So thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm hoping this will be an interactive exchange, so I'm not just telling you what we're doing. Please feel free to ask me. I will say that pastor of community ministry is a position I kind of created for myself when I took a full-time faculty position. So we don't normally get to do that in church, right? You say to them, I'm leaving, but I will stay to do these kinds of things. So as our was introduced, you were told that, reminded that Unity is a consolidated church or a merger between Spirit of Life, was the only African-American Lutheran church in Delaware, and then Zion, which was a basically German-American Lutheran church right in the city. And so we are now a small multicultural urban congregation. If you don't know where we're located, we decided to stay where Zion was. So in some ways, we're kind of in a hot area. We're near Union Street and Lincoln Street, some of the busier places in the city. But just across the street from Union Park Gardens, which is a very residential area. And we're on the west side of Wilmington, so there's a lot of diversity there. Like in the same 3 or 4 blocks, you can see a lot of diversity that represents the city. So you probably know Pastor Pettit. He's been in the area more than 20 years. He became the senior pastor when I took a full-time position teaching. Before that, we were co-pastors to sort of shepherd both of our communities. And right now, I get to do the fun stuff, like Bible studies that I want to do, book studies, counseling, which I'll talk more about, public theology, Lutheran volunteer, spiritual mentor, and I preach once a week or so. So I have the kind of cream of the crop role for the pastoral piece. Who's with you guys now? I know you had a long-term interim, and then how, are you also in transition?
Yeah, we have a pastor coming next week that we're going to meet and greet.
Okay. To call, or is this a new
Yeah,
interim? Oh, congratulations, congratulations. And what were you looking for specifically?
Vicky's on that committee. You want to speak, Vicky?
Vicky?
We were looking for someone who was called to come to us.
Okay.
I don't know how to say. It's a dance. It's we had 8 on the call committee representing pretty much the scope of the church. So.
Yeah, and I don't know the composition of your church. I was very close to Pastor Scott, so I knew more about what was happening with you guys then. But our congregation is quite. We're a bit older, right?
Yes.
I would say our average age is maybe 65. We don't have a lot of kids, and we're trying to work on that.
Yeah, we're in the same boat.
Okay.
65 is young.
I was going to say, that's a young congregation compared to.
Well, I'm, I think I might be leaning on the young side, but I'm trying. So, in addition to Pastor Pettit and myself, we currently have a lot of volunteers in the congregation who are also seminary trained. So, this is Minister Cynthia at one of our Synod events, Reverend Lorraine Dryden, and Reverend Brian Sanders. Reverend Dryden was with Spirit of Life, and she's helped them for many years. And then Reverend Sanders is fairly new to our community, and he just sort of jumped right in to help with ministries and grant writing and things like that. One of the things that these partners, our other seminary trained folks, help with is trying to partner with community agencies. Sorry, it's not cut off on my screen. I'm not sure what's showing up. And so a recent event that we had was, well, I guess not so recent, last spring was a COVID vaccination event. We partnered with St. Francis in the city. I think they came back for another round later that fall. And then coming up this week is a forum on Alzheimer's with the Delaware Ecumenical Council on Children and Families. Have you done any of those kinds of COVID-related things here? Is that not much of a need? We also have a Lutheran Community Service food pantry, and we have a growing, no pun intended, it's increasing in size, and an area on the side of the church that's a community garden. And our original goal was to sort of invite folks from the neighborhood in to help grow and share. That hasn't really taken off, but we do have a new coordinator who's increased the number of beds and increased the yield of those beds, and so we try to supplement what we have for our food pantry with some fresh items. And a big part of my work right now is to provide professional counseling. I mainly work with individuals and couples. It's tough. I am currently finishing up my licensing requirements in Delaware, so I am unable to accept insurance payments. So what we offer is a sliding scale fee as an outreach for Unity. I try not to turn people away for cost, but sometimes they might need a higher level of care than I can provide since I have very few hours in the week to spare. But I tend to see folks, a lot of anxiety right now, and you can imagine all the reasons that there be a spike in anxiety. And I'm increasingly having couples work. That anxieties, the individual anxieties affecting the relationships as well. I specialize in spiritually integrated psychotherapy, which is it's a specialty, right? Not every clinician is equipped to handle folks' spiritual lives. And what we mean by spiritually integrated is not that it's a religion-based, it's not based on any particular faith, but that we're able to meet people where they are. So whatever they bring in terms of religion or spiritual practice, we can try to help them navigate the coping skills that they might use in their spiritual life to support their mental health. Or vice versa. If this problem is spiritual, then using some of their psychological gifts and skills to help manage their spirituality. And then I also like to think that I specialize in multicultural counseling, which, if I say that to you, that usually kind of people give me back a very narrow range of, what does that mean? But what do you understand when I say multicultural?
Okay, all cultures.
Yeah, the variety of
All races.
all races,
cultures,
All
including transgender.
Okay, so you're right. It deals with race, ethnicity, culture, age. We talked about that. Both of us having aging populations in our congregation. Gender, sexual orientation. We mentioned religion, immigration status. I think socioeconomic status. Pretty much any diversity, as you said, any human diversity you can think of. And we try to be sensitive to adapting existing counseling techniques to work with different populations. There's a lot of evidence that suggests some things are more helpful than others. We have been planning to offer groups when we can. People don't really want, people who have to, like there are a lot of AA groups meeting online through Zoom, but a lot of other groups really just say to me they don't want to meet online, so we've been holding off to try to offer groups, particularly around loss, a lot of COVID-related loss in terms of work and relationship change and things like that, actual grief in terms of death, and then anxiety as well as racial trauma. Any questions?
So are you doing any groups online at this point?
No. I'm forming one. I have 3 or 4 people who are really interested and they say they're willing, but it's hard to get the 5th and 6th person right now to fill that group. They can't be too large, but if they're too small, it doesn't work either. It's definitely an art to that work. So just before the pandemic hit, this is late fall 2019, we formed a nonprofit called Unity Reach. And Reach stands for Resources, Empowerment, Action, Compassion, and Healing. And our mission was to provide community-based counseling and accompaniment for Newcastle County residents experiencing trauma and stress-related disorders. Little did we know that 2020 would bring even more opportunities for people to experience stress and anxiety. But at the same time, it meant that our buildings were closed and our access to face-to-face contact with people has really been diminished. So we haven't done much with the nonprofit at this point. We just haven't had the people power and the ability to find people. We've been looking for grants and grant writers. And when I say I have a full-time faculty position, I have a full-time faculty position. I don't have a lot of extra time to devote to the administrative piece. So we're really trying to get that up and running now. When it looks like we'll be able to see one another this summer, the COVID surges seem to be coming down. We're really hopeful that we can really get the nonprofit going as we're able to see one another. I'm also hoping, don't know that this will, what the market for it is, what the need for it is in this area, but to expand our offerings beyond counseling to individual and groups, spiritual direction. Do you guys have much experience with spiritual direction?
I had some.
And I'm just curious, do you think there would be, people would be interested? I see some heads, kind of maybe. Yeah. It's different than a counseling relationship. It's different than a pastoral relationship. But you are with someone, walking with them, praying with them, being with them. as they talk about and explore their spiritual lives, their identity, their relationship with God, strengths, weaknesses, kind of thing.
You discussed discernment of where their direction should be.
Mm-hmm. Discernment is a huge piece of that, and like the variety of counseling theories, they're huge numbers, over thousands of years and multiple traditions, different approaches to doing, say, an examination, like a Franciscan exam or Ignatian exam, helping with that discernment. I'm currently in a program it's out of Brooklyn. One of my former supervisors asked me to help him because it's a specifically spiritual direction program designed for people of color, and he needed people of color to actually lead the program. So right now it's being sponsored by St. Augustine's Episcopal Church in Brooklyn. But we are also meeting online, so right now we've expanded our reach. So some of our members are outside of the New York area. And I'm hoping that, I don't know, when there's some extra hours added to the day, I can maybe start that program, a training program here in our Delaware, Maryland City.
When you talk about, thinking of expanding your offerings and so forth, are you planning to add counselors to your staff, or?
If we can find the funding. Right now, when we first started, our musician is also a clinician. He's a licensed clinical social worker and very busy in the city. So when we first started talking about the nonprofit, it was with the idea that he and I would start with the clinical work, and then maybe he does a lot of supervision, have interns come in to help with the work. And with COVID, we haven't been able to expand that, but we would also need funding to do that. Because he would have to sort of carve out time in his already complicated work life. Part of the problem is we both want to do this work and we both have full-time jobs, so it's going to be hard to do that. But if we can use advanced interns, we would not only then serve the community that way, helping them work in the community and get their training, but be able to expand our offerings. We also have one of the seminary trained folks I talked to you about before is also a social worker. And we recognize the need to have social workers working hand in hand with mental health. Because often you need to take care of those basic needs. People need to be housed and fed and have other medical care if the counseling services are going to work. So the idea is we have a nice plan, we just don't have people to write the grants and find the funds for us at this point.
Are there other agencies that you could work with or engage into the community aspect of that, or the idea of community service?
That's one of the things that Reverend Sanders is exploring. He's the executive director of the Delaware Ecumenical Council for Families, Children and Families. Yeah, so he does that kind of work in the community, and he connects with other congregations. There's some groups in the city counseling groups in the city that we want some connections with. But, and I think, on one hand, COVID has been horrible in terms of keeping people at home and away and sort of everybody kind of just barely hanging on. But in other ways, revealing the need. So I think in some ways, once we kind of get our feet under us, it might be easier to do some of those relationships that we've been thinking about. We're not in a bad location in the city. We're not in the middle of the city. We're away. We have parking. It's kind of quieter area.
How large is your congregation typically?
I think I put that on there somewhere. We're small. We're small. We have like maybe 50 families. So I don't know. I don't remember now the most recent number of people in the books. But I would say maybe 150 members and about 50 of those active. So right now with COVID, we've been meeting throughout the surge and just encouraging people to social distance and wear their masks. So we might have 30, 35 folks in the sanctuary and others watching, but we're a small group. what motivated your question? Just besides
Curiosity.
curiosity. Okay. So a couple of years ago, I got a grant to do public theology. And, you know, in good Lutheran fashion, Luther wrote a lot of things while drinking with friends. And so I like that, I like that idea of taking church into the community. And so not everyone likes the whole pub atmosphere, however. So we wanted to expand it to include anybody who would want to come. So we've been experimenting with meeting at coffee shops. There's a new bookstore in Wilmington that I'm hoping to form a connection with. They're locally community-based. They do a lot of book readings and invite folks in. And they really want to be a part of the community. It's called Books and Bagels. It's in the Cool Spring area. So I'm hoping that to expand our conversation. And the idea is we'd use the resources from pub theology, which, you know, it's great to have someone else looking at the world and current events and coming up with interesting questions to talk about. And so what's different about my approach is it's intentionally interfaith. So beyond, and it's intended to invite folks who have no particular affiliation as well, so that it really is open to anyone and everyone. And then other things that Unity is kind of connected with, because I'm connected with them, are the Racial Justice Ministry team for the Synod. Again, we haven't been doing that much face-to-face, but maybe you saw the video series we did last Lent. It was if not, I'll give you the link to it, and you can watch it 2 years from now when those lessons come around. But we had 5 speakers, and then kind of a Oprah-style Q&A after the session. We had, locally, we met with St. Philip's not too long ago. They're really engaged in immigration and refugee services right now. I'm working with Afghan families, so it's exciting to see how busy they are. Racial justice and social justice work is a lot of what I do with my teaching position as well. So it was nice to be able to carry on that work with the Synod. I'm in my 5th year, I think, of working with Lutheran Volunteer Corps here in Wilmington as their, quote, spiritual mentor. I don't know how much I mentor them, but we do a lot of talking. LVC right now is really interested in helping them explore their faith and social justice as well. So this year there are 3 young ladies. It's a smaller group. They're very talented, really committed to their work. It's exciting. I feel like it's more fun for me than for them. I like working with that group. I know in the past some folks here have been sponsors or family hosts for LVC. Delaware, the state of Delaware is funding a program called Faith Forward Collaborative, Healing Substance Abuse. And so they help direct state funds towards faith-based treatment and services for people in recovery and their families. That's, I think that group is about 2 years old now. Again, we faced the same problems that other groups did with COVID, so we've been doing a lot of training online. But they will come out, if you're interested, they will come out and do, sorry, I only had 1 cup of coffee today, Narcon training, so that you would be equipped with the medication and given the skills so that you can help reverse an overdose if you ran into that situation. So they're always looking for places to train folks and distribute Narcon. And then a lot of our work has, like I said, focused on educating, particularly clergy, because we don't necessarily have a good record for treating people in recovery very well. And given the numbers of opioid addiction deaths in Delaware, there are a lot of families who are grieving as well. So there's multiple opportunities to do ministry in that area. And then I have just recently become involved with the Christian Council of Delmarva. It's coordinated through the Episcopal Church. And a few weeks ago, we had a healing service, a time to act and a time to pray. And the group is much more intentional about meeting and organizing now, sort of getting all of the Christian denominations in the area focused on racial justice. And just being decent human beings. I think that's such a rare thing that we do in churches these days. So that work is also happening. And again, led by the Episcopal Church, but they're very eager to make it a truly ecumenical process. We have a couple of projects that had been in the works that are really on hold. I had a tiny grant to do some 12-step worship services. And we tried that for about a year, and we just could not find the right time or the right person in the community to kind of be the host or the sponsor for the group. But I'm hopeful that we will be able to restart something like that. Really kind of talking to folks in the community and asking what they need. Because when I talk to people, I don't know how much experience you have with 12 steps. But it's one of the most spiritual exercises I've ever seen. And whenever I go to a meeting to visit, I'm always just really moved by the stories that people share and how important their faith life, whatever that looks like, is important in their sobriety. And so we had developed a 12-step Lutheran service, integrating readings and reflections and that kind of dialogue sermon. And so I'm really hoping that, if not that, then something organic from the community will form. I mean, it's sad when it's not much money, but it's sad when you have the money sitting there and it's not being used for the purpose. And then at our most recent annual meeting, our council said, two goals that we have for the coming year. Is really starting up a mentoring program for our youth and others in the community, and financial education across the lifespan. And actually, there's a third thing here that wasn't so much from the council as it was from our other seminary-trained volunteers. They wanted a new worship service. It's completely different from anything we do or have done, not even your normal, non-traditional contemporary service, but something that would really speak to today's youth. So I'm not sure what that's going to look like. I'm excited to see it. I don't know what else to say about that. These are in the works. They're just forming. So when I talked with your organizer here, and I said, well, what is it that you want me to say? She said, well, tell us what you do and where you think we can help. So we are in desperate need of advisory board members for Reach, Unity Reach, that nonprofit that we formed and hasn't been fully developed. That someone who maybe doesn't want to be on the board but is gifted at grant finding or grant writing would also be important. If we are having events, it would be wonderful if people would come out. If we're doing book studies, to join them and to spread the word that we are offering counseling and hopefully soon spiritual direction services. Do you know people in your community who might be that interested in mental health?
Sojourners would be please. Sojourners, are you familiar with them? They're right down Governor Prince. Do they do 12-step there?
Yeah,
Drug and alcohol.
Oh, okay.
So it is you guys can speak better about what it actually is. They have, it's a place where people can go and stay
This is a treatment facility.
Yeah, it's a shelter, it's a shelter for men and women. And they can stay there. They give them jobs to do inside, and,
Classes.
pardon me?
Classes.
Yeah, they have classes during the day.
I will say I reached out to Brandywine Counseling Center, which is just a couple blocks away from us, which is a treatment center in the city, to integrate some spiritual direction with them. But they offered me 6 a.m., so I had to decline. So I haven't returned to try to figure out, with COVID, I haven't returned to figure out if maybe another time is possible. But that wouldn't work for me, but there might be someone else in that group who could do that. But that's when a lot of people come in early morning before work to have their services. So.
You have grant finding and writing there. Dr. Smith, did you have him across the street that came about 4 weeks ago?
Yeah.
If they need somebody that could grant, like, he was fabulous finding money, wasn't he? For,
This is the director of Bellevue Community Center, Bill Wisniewski.
Okay.
And from what I understand, he's really skilled in grant writing and has been successful in getting lots of money for Bellevue Community Center. Now he's also extremely busy.
Yeah, this is the problem we run into, right?
Yeah.
Those who really know what they're doing are really busy, and often they're doing that work on top of their other
But he
jobs.
also has, some staff, so he might be somebody who would be worth your while talking with and just seeing, whether or not he could help grant writing in some kind of way.
Okay. I will get his name and spelling before
Okay.
we
if not, Cliff will give you a couple thousand.
Eli Lilly is known for sponsoring various faith-based initiatives.
Yes, and the public theology that I talked to you about is a Lilly-funded activity. And they're really interested in innovative work right now. And I don't know, maybe it counts that you would have, what our vision is for Unity Reach is long-term accompaniment. A lot of programs want people to come in and get out. But if you're facing long-term or lifelong issues, the idea that, 6-8 sessions is going to be good and you're fine is not likely. So that's
When you have your book studies and Bible studies, do you send that out to the other Lutheran churches?
sometimes I remember this is another problem. Right now we don't have administrative staff at Unity. We're hoping that will change. Because some days I'm not even sure what my name is because my schedule is insane. But yes, we're hoping that if we add some administrative staff, that more of that will get out. I mean, I come from a professor background, right? I do my work, I show up. I don't have to get students in, right?
Yeah.
That's really not my skill set. And I think, especially in the age of social media, that requires a certain kind of finesse that I really don't have. But that is true. We're hoping that that'll be more consistent.
Well, if we stay in touch with you, if you could let us know when the book studies are, that would be helpful. Because, not that we never do that kind of thing here, because we do, but it's nice to know what the other churches are doing, because sometimes people want to take advantage of that, depending on what the place and so on.
Yeah, I'm thinking we also have trouble fitting those in, but there's one that I just found out about that I'm really interested in terms of a book, in terms of social justice and education for Christians. It's called "If God Still Breathes, Why Can't I?" And it's by African American New Testament theologian, and she's talking about biblical inerrancy and infallibility as a tool of white supremacy. So I'm really hoping to organize a book group around that. It's a small book. It's easy to read. Despite the seriousness of the topic, it's a really easy to read piece, not heavy on theology, but very clearly illustrating her argument. So your turn. What are you looking to do?
we have a lot of programs that we've managed to get on Zoom. And John has us set up so that these kind of programs and the things that Pastor Dave was doing are on our, what do you call, YouTube website. And so people who can come in and see like what you had to say and what Bellevue is doing, community center is doing. And so our goal is to get the word out. It's all these programs there. I mean, there are programs around here that are amazing, and we want to get the word out. And right now, a lot of programs are like on. I'm involved in Kairos prison, and so we're waiting. Maryland looks like they're going to open up next week, so we're waiting to see if they're ready to have us come back in.
I was surprised to learn how many layers of hoops you have to jump through just to visit with people and or even send letters and books and things that seem like just a basic human contact.
Well, we come in with a team of usually about 32 women, and we usually have 30 residents in our program, and that makes their skin crawl pretty tight. So there is a lot of hoops for us to jump through. We're also, this congregation is involved in Family Promise. You work with the Delaware Senate.
Delaware has a legislative group. Headed by
Reverend
Pastor
Simmons? Yes, yeah.
In Dover, yeah. And the churches have representatives. I don't know that there's anybody from Unity. There certainly could be.
No, I've been beating the bushes, but
We also are involved with Hilltop.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't mention them, but yeah, our part of our congregation is still very actively involved in Hilltop. In fact, their directors are one of our members. So. Because this is hard. I should have asked a lot of other folks to contribute to this because I can't keep track of everything. But we don't have so much a physical presence at Hilltop very much anymore. We're more kind of holiday involved. But my understanding is Zion was very active with that program from the beginning.
From the beginning, yeah. So was this church from the beginning. Yeah. Because there were people when that was really a shack. It's now in their hands, basically.
Yeah, now, the house that the LDC uses is right next door to Hilltop, and I think they might lease it from Hilltop. I'm not sure about that.
They might what?
Lease it from them.
Oh, I think they might.
And all along, every speaker that we've heard has so many good things and turning eyes outward toward the community. I think that's one of the things that we're learning from everyone that's come is all the different innovative ways that we could also maybe turn our eyes outward. So thank you for the courage that your congregation exhibits in reaching out to people with a lot of problems. Take a lot of faith, I would imagine, and strength from God to do that. So I appreciate that. I think Pastor Mueller, all the time he's been here as an interim pastor, I think he's encouraged all of us to explore our gifts and our passions. So I think anything that you said today, anyone who's passionate about anything that you've spoken of, it's good to hear what the because you never know what's going to strike a chord in someone's heart and say, that's what I want to do. So just information and knowing what the programs are and what the needs are. So I just appreciate that. And again, it takes a lot of courage for churches. I think we want to take care of ourselves and grow spiritually, but if we're Christians, we're servants. That's the biggest thing that we know about God is that He loves others as He has loved us. So I think that's where we all are in this transition as we're trying to find our way individually and as a congregation. So anything that we can do to help or, be encouraged by what you're doing is wonderful. So thank you.
Yes.
I know a writer who would love to write about 20 of the 21 things you mentioned. Unfortunately, they write during the day, because by the end of the day, that brain is often like a flat tire. But there are times, sometimes I may not be present physically in the thing, but I do some work at 2 in the morning, at 3 in the morning, and if I knew that I could write something for our website or write something for yours, or even, I've not written grants, but I know stories are a big part of grant writing and a big part of drawing people into the thrill of serving Christ in this manner, and the many different outreaches you have. I find almost every one of them compelling, and to put names or at least faces or personal stories to those, that's how you turn a grant foundation's heart in your direction. So I don't know exactly how to connect the dots, and that's maybe where the word discernment comes in for me. But I wish there was a big clearinghouse of people who were interested and could just look and, they need that, they need that. So maybe, and I think I said this to Rosie when she came, that maybe a week or so ago, I saw on the Synod website a list of churches that had all of their services online. You could go, and if you couldn't come to your church, you could go watch one of those. And I wonder if there's a way for us to compile gifts, besides financial, yes, but also gifts of other kinds that might be. That's something I'm kind of interested in developing for our area.
That would be wonderful, because I usually hear about something the week after it happened, right? Like, and even if I couldn't have gone, maybe I could have shared it with someone else, right? Yeah,
or you might watch a recording of it later if that's available. So I hope I can. Yeah, I feel like when you were talking about it, you have all these aspirations and you just need the horses, and I feel like I have one horse and it's tired. It wants to run in every race.
Yeah, that's exactly. Someone explained it to me recently. There's a mindfulness exercise thinking about spoons. And I imagine my dish drawer with a spoon. It's like some tasks take 2 spoons, and you only have 2 spoons. So maybe that isn't the thing for you. But it is true. Like, we're all really excited, but we're overworked and overextended. So I appreciate that. But I do think that having someone coordinate just a website or even a Facebook page that sort of connects all the congregations would be a great tool. That's sort of what the Faith Forward Collaborative is trying to do in terms of recovery ministries, really make a local one-stop shopping to help advertise all the things that are happening in faith-based groups around recovery in Delaware. So maybe we could follow that model. That'd be good.
Are other churches connecting with you as well?
So part of the problem, like when I was full-time, I spent a lot more time with our clergy study group. I usually can't do that now because it's happening in the middle of my workday, and I don't preach enough to really make it a good use of my time. But I think that people are connecting more, and we have a new dean for the area, and she's downstate, and so she's been much more intentional about reaching out to us and trying to make connections. So I think as we come out of the COVID bubble and the winter snow, I think more of that is happening. I'm really absent-minded too, so not only do I have too many horses and too many spoons, but I forget by the time we get to the door what the last thing I said was. It's really bad.
You not only have too many spoons, you have too much on your plate.
Exactly, exactly.
Can only do so much in your spoon.
Which, in some ways, which is why it was nice, because my work at Wilmington is in the clinical mental health counseling department. We train counselors. And so it was an easy extension to sort of link that work with the counseling work I'm doing at Unity. But part of that is I have to maintain the practice. I have to keep doing what I'm teaching. And so that's a kind of nice link up. But some of the other things are a bit harder to fit into the normal daily routine.
I have a question about your counseling services. Way back in the day, I was director of Trustler Center for Human Growth and Services, which was the largest outpatient psychotherapy center in Bellevue for a period of time. So what I'm wondering is how much your counseling program is involved in all of the mental health regulations that go on. For example, do you operate under HIPAA
Oh, definitely.
regulations?
Yeah, definitely have to operate.
Do you have to keep your records according to all that?
Yeah, although because I'm not taking insurance, the requirements for my records are a little less intense than some other places.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, but definitely we are covered under HIPAA and a huge list of ethics, right? which sometimes makes it a little complicated because you might know someone from a congregation, or they might know someone who knows someone, which is how they were referred to you. So, in some ways it makes it easy because the person doesn't have to explain why they might know me, right? So if they see me in public, we can just say hello and go about our business. But other times it might make it a little uncomfortable for people if the therapist also shows up in your Sunday morning life, right? It can be a little weird.
But do you have a pamphlet or anything that describes your services and the background of the people that are offering the services?
I can send you guys a link to my website. I don't actually have a pamphlet. We did have that it was part of Unity Outreach. It was an explanation there, and there's an explanation on the website. I meant to bring lots of business cards, but like I said, I'm absent-minded. So the only advertising we do for the Unity Outreach piece is on our sign and on our website. But my practice is fruitful conversations. So that's how most people find me.
Thank you.
And right now it's me. So, we can only do so much. But it is helpful for folks who don't have health care or whose health care deductibles are so high or their copays are so high they wouldn't be able to see a therapist anyway. That it can be useful.
Right. Yeah.
So we were face-to-face, had an annual Dr. Seuss service, and so we try to have fun at Unity and to bring joy to other people. And I want to thank you for inviting me, and I hope that your new ministries and ongoing ministries will continue to be blessed. And congratulations on calling the pastor.
Thank you.